are on YouTube, and we're just getting all set up in the global classroom. So, hello, everybody out there in the big solar system and beyond. You should be able to hear me and probably see me. And Maureen is getting the spacecraft all ready to go, but you might see the spacecraft on the tarmac right now, and already there is fuel coming out from the bottom, getting ready to blast off. Yes, very good. So we're going to start in 10 minutes officially. Great. Amir, how you doing? I'm good. All right, so I just need to get myself organized a little bit, but I just want to make sure that we are good. We have over here, I'm going to get our agenda up there. The microphones are all working. Let's start getting the clipboard, okay, going. And I'll get our notes. Uh, and I need to tie my shoes. That's really important. Um, Gina, is it Gina? Can you hear me right now, Gina?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
You? Gina, are you able to come onto your microphone? If not, don't worry. Just curious if you can. That way I can walk around and talk to you. Yeah, that's Sean waving to you. Let's see. How's your microphone? Okay. No, I don't. I didn't hear you. That's fine. It might be just we need to get our speaker connected. Maureen can take care of that. But as long as you can hear me clearly and you tried, that's great. By the way, Gina, I wanted to just say to you that are you the third year law clerk advanced? Are you that student? I can't remember. Yes, Gina? Yeah. You know why I ask? Because that was a really good post for your first discussion post. And are we? Okay. So I think that she tried to speak. Okay. So Gina, go ahead and just answer now. We think we can hear you. Um, Gina, um, did you write that post about AI?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, great. Excellent. We can. Very good. I just wanted to say to you as we get set up that it's really great to have a third year student in this class. This class has many students from different programs and different years, but the third year students are usually fewer and farther between, but they're there, and they can often be kind of role models for the students. But then every so often, a third year student comes along, like yourself, who is pretty motivated, and you went ahead and posted and watched the recording, and you had barely even registered for the course at that point, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's great. And that really indicates to me something important in terms of motivation. And I see you joining the live class right now. So, could you do me a favor and just be ready to read out loud your first discussion post, what you wrote? It will be a little bit later, okay, in the class?
Sure.
Thanks a lot, okay? Um,
Thank you.
all right, so let's just keep, yeah, great. Get that going. And I'm just going to get things connected, but it's great that Maureen's here because I was ready to troubleshoot on my own. But my tech is working, so I'm not experiencing any tech stress right now. If there's tech stress, then we get into troubleshooting. Um, and that's fun. Okay, so tech welcome today, ahead on board, lecture, activity, exactly. And then the, you know what we'll call after the activity, I'm thinking, call it the tank, think tank, okay? So the tank and then take up. Oh, yeah, look at that. Now you did right well, Maureen. And then post two. Just put post two underneath. Yeah, good. I don't know how you write nicely quickly because as soon as it starts to get That's good. Huh. Okay, so just we've got 5 minutes before we officially start. Just remember that the clipboard is going around, right? For you know how it works. And I see. Just a second. Are you in the class, or uh, can you do me a favor? You don't have to sit here because it would be best if you sat in the circle. But could you? Excellent. If you don't, then as long as you sit in this first row behind somebody, that way we feel like everybody's in the class. What's your name? You're Madison? Great. Yeah, Madison, please, if you don't mind, grab a seat there. And let's see. So we're getting going. Wow. Maureen is completely on it. Oh, do you need the map? Uh, oh, yeah, just go ahead. As long as we get and could you put up the Romeo, put up Planet Live for now, and then we'll run the Romeo Dallaire. And Planet Live up there, Romeo Dallaire, actually switch it, okay? Because leave that's perfect. That's perfect. And then Planet Live up on there. That will work with Toria. And let's see. Okay, so all right, so for everybody online right now, as you can see, Maureen is getting the big board set up. We call it the big dashboard in the global classroom. And if there's anything that you would like to share with all of us once we start the class, just send it to the live chat, and then we can actually look at it and discuss it and explore it together. So the idea is that when you enter this space, whether you're online or you're in person or later watching the recordings, that you are entering into a hub of global learning. That's the idea. This is what this classroom is. It's a hybrid multimedia classroom for the future. Okay, so let me just start to, and one of the things that I really get excited about is when it starts to work the way I envision it. Um, and it needs tech support. And with Maureen there now officially, it's great. So, all right. So for the online viewers and then later for the recording, just remember that you have your second discussion post. It is going to be needs to be posted after today's class or before next week's class, and I'm going to address that soon. Come on, can you grab a seat in the couch? Yeah, thanks a lot. Okay, and then what I'd like to do in terms of today is, can we tighten this shot up, the master shot, so that we get, and I'll show you, and it'll start to really look good. Come on in, grab a seat on the couch. If not, just take a seat in one of the desks in the first row. And that way we get this nice feeling of everybody. Uh, oh, yeah, let's see. Yeah. Um, come, come over. Um, go towards, so pan this way, the other way. Try, essentially, what we want is to keep panning that direction. That's it. Okay, now tilt it down, the camera down a little bit and zoom in, because the idea is we want to fill the frame with students in the class and less wall. Okay, now zoom in a little bit more. Um, keep zooming in so that the edges of the video wall, the board are keep okay, and then just that's it. And then for these guys, watch this. Put, we'll just see the backs of their heads. And we've got this amazing head of hair here today. Could you just grab a seat there? And that way we get a real feeling for people and in the class, okay? And what you're seeing is YouTube live there. And remember, what we're doing is we're creating the feeling of a class for the world. That's the idea, okay? So we need to fill up the couches, and then behind the couches, we see the backs of people's heads. But could you just go back to I just want to make sure we tighten this up properly today. Okay. You can zoom out a little bit so that the edges of the big board are showing, just the edges, a little bit more. Yeah, it's something like that. Exactly. Exactly. You got it. And then what I've noticed is what I can do is I can come around. Yeah, I can go over there or students can go there. But if you come back, I can actually address right now the live stream viewers or the recording students. So this is the television show feeling, okay, that I'm bringing people into the studio and we are the critical people. You're seeing me doing a little bit of directing now I have a long background in television and film. And journalism, so I can bring these skills in here. Come on in. Great. The idea is that, wow, we are really in good shape. And this is excellent. We're actually getting some returning. Yes. Oh, okay. Don't worry about it. Yeah, that's fine. If it's interesting, it may. Oh, because you know why? Because there's a 10-second delay. It may, but you took it out. Okay, don't sweat it. Okay, so I'm just going to close these doors here so that we can get proper audio. But we actually are in really good shape with the tech working. And you just put the switch so that Toria goes over on the other in the corner and Delaire goes here. Okay? Yeah, that's right. That's what we're going to do. Romeo, that's beautiful. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. You're ahead of me right now. I'm expecting things to take longer to be set up properly. Okay, then let's get going. Welcome everyone to our second Global Leader class of the winter semester in the Global Classroom here at Durham College. And today we have a lot to get ready for in the coming weeks. That's when the guests are going to start, and you're going to be meeting all sorts of different young and not so young global leaders or people who are really starting to achieve and are also thinking about solving important problems that have global and local significance. Yeah, exactly. Come on in and just fill up. If you can fill up over here, these, and you want to just bring back, that's okay. Don't worry about that. Just fill, exactly. That way we're creating, that's the view on YouTube, and it looks like there are people here, which is, and there are. We're not faking it. This is not BS. It's just that we need to position things to think about what's being pushed out on YouTube to the world. That's maybe the difference for some of you in terms of coming into this space is you probably have never been in a classroom before where attention is paid to how it looks and feels for the live stream and for the people watching the recordings later. But the idea is that we pay attention to these things because they matter. There are, this class is completely full and fully registered, I think at 55 or 56 right now. So there's a lot of students who are not here and they're not online as well. They're watching the recording. So they need to experience the class in the way that you do. And that way the recording is really important on the back end of YouTube at 1080p high def resolution. So I talked about that last week. We can get going today. There's a lot really to start to think about, and I just want to take it step by step and thank Maureen, as always, our Global Classroom Coordinator, who is doing so much for me and other faculty, because we are trying to build something really great for not just you, but the world. And the reason is because, and this is very important to today's class, the world is extremely complicated today. It's a bit of a mess, but it's also filled with opportunity. You need to be really, really smart. And we in the world of education need to be using technology in a much more sophisticated way to help you learn better. That's the vision behind this. I am passionately committed to the idea of helping humanity come together to be smarter. That's my thing. As a global leader, what we're going to explore more today is this idea of some of the critical skills that you need. And I'm going to talk about those a little bit later in a small lecture. But first, I want to follow the format that we will have for our classes, as always, and just remind you that starting next week, we're going to start to have guests coming generally. And I wanted to spend today preparing you for that. But you did sign up for a class where you're going to be meeting a lot of interesting people, and that's happening. But you need to be set up for this. I thought that also Amir mentioned something very good on the discussion post where he actually said, "Are we going to be talking mostly about ourselves and not about leaders?" And that was a good question. And of course, the answer is no, we're going to be talking about leaders. But that was just the first class. Okay. And the intention I had last week is to get us connected. We're the most important part, Amir, in here, and we've got to get connected. But I like what you wrote in there. What I'd like to do in terms of following a format is essentially every week, depending on when the guest joins us, I'd like to start with a review. And the review are coming. So the first 15 or 20 minutes of the class, generally from about 10:10 to 10:30, will be when we kind of review and look at these posts and review some of the content from last week and maybe the notes and get you ready for the new content. So we're going to do that momentarily, but I just want to, as always, make sure that everybody is signing the clipboard here. Okay, so the clipboard is making its way around. Great. What's your name again? Dylan. Excellent. But is it Rolston? Yeah, Dylan Rolston. I remember last names now. Great. So make sure all of you who are here in person, you know the drill probably, but I'll keep reminding you from last week that if you come in person, you will immediately receive for doing nothing else but being here, you will get 2 out of 3. If you post the question afterwards before the next class, just the question based on the class, you get 3 out of 3. And I was up late last night getting the marks updated, so everyone should have their participation marks from last week already. You should have received that, and you should know more or less where you stand. Quite a few of you have received 0, and that would be for the students watching the recordings. If you're watching them, okay, just be aware, all of you out there in the distant galaxy right now, I know you're there. There are many of you out there. Uh, just remember, and I'm saying this right now at the beginning of the class, so I'm not going to be checking to see if you're watching all of the class or you're watching even some of it. That's your call. But it's going to hurt you if you think that you don't need to watch the classes and then do any of the work and just wait for the assignments because, well, I can explain that later. So just let me just say this to the students watching the recordings, okay? A lot of you received a 0 for your first discussion point post, and that's because you didn't do it. And it makes me think that you didn't even watch any of the recording. So I'm just going to say for now, this is the beginning of feedback that I will always be doing at the beginning of each class along with the review. Make sure the students who are watching the recordings that you are staying up with the classes because you could be falling behind. too. And I will always remind you, all of you, that if you want the easy marks and you want to have fun in this class and you want the full power of this experience, you should be here in person, interacting in person. But you don't have to. Everything's set up for you to be watching the recordings. But most of the students participating in the class are watching the recordings. I have 222 students this semester in my 3 classes that I teach out of here. 222. I've never had so many. And the vast majority are joining online through the recordings. So just I need to make sure they're always clear on what's coming. And you can always email me if you have any questions, okay? So let me move on. We're going to review in a moment, and we're going to have one student. Hopefully, she's still with us. Excellent. Gina online, read out loud what she wrote in the discussion post. But does anybody have any questions? Anything on your mind about anything that you're seeing happen in the world right now that you would like to discuss right now in terms of current events? A global leader is a person who is thinking about the whole world. You have a global mindset, but you're acting locally. So it's really important that you know what is going on around the world on the planet today. But it's okay if you Brandon, by the way, is a former student of mine who sometimes joins when he can, and I'm going to just bring him. Actually, do you need someone to hold it for you? I can't remember. Do you need someone to hold the microphone for you? I can't remember. Sean, do you want to come in? Yeah, Sean will do it. Okay. And did you wanted to say something, right? Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
So, if anybody is following along with the whole politics for Canada and the US, it's all kind of a joke right now, but I'm happy that Justin Trudeau has decided to step down because we definitely need a break from this liberal society. But with Justin or with Donald Trump wanting to invade Panama
And Canada and Greenland and yeah, keep going.
Wanting to annex Canada. So it's just all really interesting, and I'm really looking forward, and I've been having a little bit of a worry to the next so many coming weeks, but it should be fun.
Thank you, Brad. Excellent, Sean. Thanks. And I just want to let you know that you're welcome to invite anybody you want to the live class. Okay, you keep that, and you'll be also holding the mic. Listen, I'm going to be very frank with all of you, and you're going to expect this from me. And I know, because as soon as I say something like that, you're all going to listen. You're all going to get your noses and your eyes out of your machines, and you're going to listen when you feel like your professor or your teacher is actually speaking to you as a grown-up and is speaking to you frankly. We're creating a television show here, but we're creating a classroom. This is a theater, it's a lounge, it's an educational experience unlike any other. So that it's really important that if you don't want to be in person and be part of this, you don't have to be here. But if you're here and you like it, bring more people in. Let's fill this up with people so that we can be having and interacting and exploring together how we're going to lead our way into a time in history that is filled with immense turbulence, conflict. The world is like a big spacecraft or plane right now, and there's a lot of turbulence. And it's you guys that are going to have to navigate this over the next 30 or 40 years. My job is to help you and prepare you for this. So Brandon is somebody I always say to any of my students, you're welcome to come even from other classes. And Brandon has, when he's here, he rolls in and he participates. But I also think Brandon stands for something really amazing in the future. Do you remember Stephen Hawking? How many of you remember Stephen Hawking? He's no longer with us, okay? Sean, who was Stephen Hawking?
A random guy who, well, not to say that he's a random guy. I remember he's the type of guy who would like experiment on things. Well,
Yeah, you're on it, but you're kind of in the rink, but you're not
yeah,
at the bench yet.
he
You're not on the
did kind of make a party for time travelers and announce the date of when it happened after it happened.
Okay, let's keep going. We need to fill in some blank. The reason I say this, Stephen Hawking had a brilliant mind, but he couldn't move, right? This is all about, in this space, bringing people's brains together, however they come, wherever they are. They can be in Bangladesh, we can be live up here, they can be in China, they can be in Peru, they could be up in Greenland or Iceland or in Alaska, or God forbid, they would be in the United States, our friend who's not our friend anymore. Doesn't matter. When you come into this space, we're the brains together. We're working on problems together as global leaders, developing global leaders. So, nothing holds this person back, I think. But, well, yes, but no, ultimately. Stephen Hawking was a physicist, one of our great physicists, scientists of the 20th century, like Albert Einstein, and others who helped us to understand something about the cosmos, the solar system, and the galaxy. He was a big, big thinker. He was also severely handicapped. He couldn't move. And he even needed a device to speak because he couldn't even speak. So,
He had like what do you call it? A disability, a physical disability.
oh, absolutely. I forget the name of what he had, but you can find it.
Google it.
Google it, or there's a good movie about it.
There's also the fact that at the very least he didn't make the atomic bomb like Albert Einstein did.
Yeah, that's true, but it wasn't Albert Einstein who made the bomb. He just discovered how to split the atom. It's called nuclear fission. It was politics and the Second World War and fascism that made us create the bomb to defeat fascism. Japan, that's who we defeated with the bomb just after Adolf Hitler killed himself in a bunker in Germany.
I'd kind of say that, if I can speak freely.
Go ahead. We're still in review, okay? We haven't really started, but Sean,
didn't
go ahead.
nuke fascism out of the earth. That ended with Germany getting stomped by the USSR. What we did destroy, however, was the last sign of, imperialism, I guess you can say. I mean, for the thing, but it was the beginning of the end of imperialism at that point.
Well, I'll stop you, Sean. This is not the world history class that I teach, but I have to say, Sean, respectfully, as well put as that is, that you're wrong in my estimation. Unfortunately, we still have imperialism.
Point.
We still have slavery. We still have cruelty.
But
we still have a lot of hatred. The only
I mentioned the fact that a majority of the colonies, like the use of colonies, is like gone down. I mean, Japan
Okay, let me
For
stop.
what-
Let me stop. Hold on. Only because I want to
Yeah.
make sure we don't get too far
class,
from our
I'll just-
default. This is good. This is good, but hold your thoughts, okay? I just want to come back to what this started with, and that is please feel free to bring people here in person so we can interact well together. Okay. I'm going to move on now to the review part and continue with feedback about the discussion posts. It was great to start reading the questions that you all did, as well as the longer explanations for those who are joining online or watching the recordings. Remember, for them, if they want full marks, they need to write a reason for their question of about 175 words. That's a kind of a longer way of introducing a student right now who has joined us today online, and that is Gina. Hi, Gina. Are you able to jump on your microphone?
I am. Hello, hello.
Excellent.
Hello, friends.
Well, excellent. And we should welcome Ajoy, I see, is joining us from Dhaka in Bangladesh. Hi, Ajoy, how are you?
Hello, Professor. After a
Great.
long time. Hello, class. Yes, going on.
Ajoy, what time is it right now in Dhaka in Bangladesh?
It's a sharp 9:30 p.m.
9:30 p.m. Okay, so we won't keep you up too late, but you are always welcome in this class. We have many students from different parts of the world who will drop in. Let's just do a quick orientation so everybody knows where Bangladesh is. I'm just going to imagine map of the world. Here are the Americas, North, Central, South America here, Atlantic Ocean, Europe, and then we go into Africa down here and we move east. We're going further east into China, into India, and then even further into countries like Malaysia, Indonesia, and Thailand and others. Bangladesh is this tiny country just at the northeastern tip of India. She's on it. It's great. Way to go. And Bangladesh is where he is right now, Dhaka, Bangladesh. And I would just like to tell you briefly, and Ajoy surely knows, one of the guests that will be joining us in the next few weeks is from there, and it's Ajoy's former professor. His name is Aftab Hussain, and he now is has a senior position at the Daffodil International University in Dhaka, Bangladesh. Ajoy is a student of Aftab's, can speak for himself fully on his own. But the two of them represent something very interesting. They just experienced last summer a democratic revolution in their country. And there is a student in this class who said, and I think it's Aaron. I don't know if you're here today, Aaron, or online. He's in the recording. Excellent. Aaron, when we did our expectations last week, Aaron said that what he expected to understand more of in this class this semester in terms of leadership is democracy. It's the place of democracy in the world and how you deal with that as a leader. Well, Ajoy and Aftab are going to be helping us to understand that firsthand. That's the kind of experiential education you're going to get from these people. So, Ajoy, can you just give us a quick little summary, just quick summary of how are things going in Bangladesh these days with the new government there?
Well, thanks, Professor. As you said about I want to use the word the democratic struggle. So now we have the interim government. This is the temporary government. They are
Yes.
just facilitating the new election, upcoming election. So after that, we gonna get a stable government, which is highly needed because last 15 years, uh, especially last 10 years, in last two term of the election, it was hacked. It was hacked, and hmm, uh, it was kind of illegally enforced by the powers group.
Yes.
And also the press, the freedom of press, as my teacher was explaining you last time, that how the freedom of expression, the freedom of press was highly censored by the
Y-
authority. It
Yeah. Yeah.
was one of the unique example in Asia, and in all over the world.
All over
As
the
I'm
world. All over the world.
hmm, Yes, and all over the world, and as I can say, because I am also the former students and a young researcher from the media and communication studies, so I can deeply understand and still observing.
Yes, absolutely. Excellent. Thanks, Joy. And I want to introduce a term for you momentarily about what we're going to really be exploring today in depth. But I'd like to bring Gina back in because I would like to come back to our discussion posts and have Gina read out loud what she wrote. Now, Gina, do you have it in? Are you able to read it out loud to us right now?
Yep, I have it up now.
Okay,
All
great.
right.
So go ahead, Gina, and read. This is the first discussion post. She was watching the recording. She she hadn't even registered. Oh, she just registered, and then she did what a lot of students don't always do. She actually went and she watched the recording and immediately did the work. She's a third-year student, law clerk, advanced. I would recommend for those of you who are first year that you listen to her a little bit because she's going to be graduating soon and she can help also open your mind too. She's third year. Go ahead, Gina. Could you just read what you wrote?
No worries. So the title is Gina's question. Is it easier for you or is it erasing you? What is the worth of a human mind and the fruit of human contributions? My question to the class would be, is AI taking our value away from us? In a school setting, it makes many things easy, writing reports, analyzing data, and of course, conjuring up a plus final assignment worth 50% of our mark. What's the harm? Well, I'll tell you, dear reader, it's to yourself. Teachers repeatedly lecture students on the harm it does, but I would argue, teachers repeatedly lecture students on the harm it does, how it's unfair or dishonest to other students or the educational institutions, which are all true. But I would argue the worst part of it is that it takes you away from you. It robs you of your critical thinking and your ability to learn, grow, connect, fight, and resolve conflicts. The mind is like a muscle, and it strengthens with use. However, with abuse of AI, you are choosing to atrophy your own mind. When your unique individual contributions and thoughts are no longer required or valued, then what use are you? None. Sorry to be harsh, but there is no time for coddling. Do not let a piece of technology render you powerless. Our world is facing catastrophes around every corner. It is essential that we all learn how to critically think in order to resolve crises on a global scale. Is that okay?
Well, from my estimation, that's pretty okay. But I think it's great, Gina. And I want to stop for a second and talk about this. Okay. We're still in the review feedback stage. We're running a little long with that, but it's okay because I'm watching time. We'll get to the big part of today's class, but let's remind ourselves. What you have to say as a result of what we explore together is the most important part of this class. So I spend time going through what you write. It matters a lot what you say. So I just want to stop and explore what she said about AI and about a little bit of feedback in terms of writing and quality of writing, all of which Gina has put on full display in a very positive way, as far as I'm concerned. Now, first, does anybody have anything they'd like to say about what Gina wrote in terms of, yeah, okay, go ahead. And remember karaoke, okay?
Yes. So I like her question very much because the the biggest downside of AI is that it's making us outsource our thinking. We no longer think for ourselves. We let it think for us, right? And on the surface level, it's like, oh yeah, it's helping you, but when you really think about it, you find out that you have no original thoughts. Everything you want, once you encounter a little problem, straight to ChatGPT, and it thinks for you. It thinks for you. You're no longer thinking for yourself. And as a global leader, for instance, if you're put on the spot and you're
Yep.
asked a serious question, you find out that you can't really come up with anything substantial, right? Everything you say is shallow. And the worst part of it is that when you can't think for yourself, as Gina just said, then you're you're basically useless.
Outsourcing your
You're,
thinking.
you're outsourcing your thinking.
Outsourcing your thinking is a great line. Yeah.
For yourself, and it's really bad because when you're no longer a human being at this point, right? And it also gives others the leverage or the ability to control you because they now tell you what to think, how to think, what to think about. Everything is dictated for you, and you're no longer a human being.
What's your name?
Afoma.
Oh, that's Afoma. Okay, sorry. Well, first, Afoma, is it okay if you take the notes again today? Did a great job. Could you go over, create a slide, okay, and just call it review, okay? Because we want to put some, and you hold that. That's going to be your microphone, okay? I'm going to just suggest, but everybody's important here. This young woman has some natural leadership skills in her bones. There's something going on there. She thinks for herself. That's critical as a leader. Would you want to work for anybody, be led by anybody who is outsourcing their thinking to a machine? She's already displayed this, and she's already displayed a willingness to go and write things when I ask. She's not afraid. She has courage. She is thinking naturally, critically. You all have this. I'm not saying none of you don't, except she's kind of the first, and maybe a few others here who have been jumping into this. But plus, she can write well, which is really nice. So, Afoma, can you just write down outsourcing your thinking? I'm going to bring Sean into this in a moment, okay? I have to be careful because we could have a whole class with me and Sean talking because he has a lot to say. But he did say something very good last class when we started to talk about this. The reason I'm spending a little bit of time on what Gina has said, AI and everything, is because AI and the development of deep machine learning, synthetic or digital intelligence replacing biological intelligence, is one of the great conundrums for humans. It will be your conundrum, your dilemma as you go into your career and your lives is, to what extent do I let the machines do the work for me? We're now at that point in history. You are living in this time. where we are accelerating the role of machines in our lives to such an extent that soon we're all going to have digital assistants. We just go online and we ask it to do things for us, pay our bills, order our food, and for the real cheaters among us, doing the work for us and hoping that our bosses and our teachers don't notice that I didn't do it, a machine did. It's a huge conundrum. So the ethical responsibilities you have are critical in how you use these devices. But Sean said something interesting. He immediately said last week, but wait a minute. These devices can help us. So this is part of the complexity of things today. And that's what we're really going to be exploring. Could you just write down the complexity of everything? The complexity of everything. This is a very complicated problem. If you're not smart enough to deal with the ethical challenges that we are dealing with today around the role of machines, somebody else is going to fill that void and you will become their sheep. Elon Musk understands that. He's brilliant. But be careful. All of you know who Elon Musk is. It's the rise of the technologically brilliant person who then gets involved in politics. That's the danger. And they begin to create things that we have to just use. Sean said, how do we use these things positively? Sean, could you maybe help us to understand that a little bit? And
To explain
we'll-
further?
We'll write some. When you last week you said, but wait a minute, I remember it. You said, you know,
Yeah,
so what did you mean that it could be a positive thing for us?
Well, as it stands currently, I do agree with you on the statement that, well, or more specifically, Gina, I agree with you the most because, well, if we're talking about normal people, for a chance. However, me and
With a disability. With a disability.
I have a mental disability by the name of autism. I stutter. Well, I can't get my
Sure.
ideas straight. However, I use ChatGPT to like get my ideas straight ahead.
Yeah, absolutely.
I only need to well, give a preference of like what my idea and direction is supposed to be. ChatGPT can like help me refurbish everything, and I just need
Yeah.
to do the rest of it. It's AI assisted. 1/3 of it is, well, made out of AI, but AI can basically fill up the gaps that I have with my weakness or disability in this case.
It makes sense, right? So he's right. Where would Brandon be without technology? Where would Stephen Hawking have been without technology? How about students here who've been in accidents, who have other mental health issues they're on medication? A lot of you are. I know that. I'm not going to ask who. I'm just going to assume because I know from research
Yeah.
we all need help. But your challenge is, where do you draw the line? Where do you not use the machine? Where do you make sure that we put the machine aside so that we maintain our humanity? Because I think Afoma had said just moments ago, I thought maybe it was you, Afoma, maybe we're losing our humanness or something like that. This is what you're facing in the world today. That's why you have to be so smart. And there are no ground rules. It's very difficult to look into history to help us to guide us because we've never lived at a time where machines are so powerful and could do so much for us. So let's just take a few more comments and then we're going to move on. Brandon, yeah, go ahead, Sean. Yeah.
So last semester, I asked like one of your guests how AI could help with my everyday office needs. And as Sean just sort of answered the question, that he's using it to help him rephrase his ideas
Yeah. Yeah.
and get them into proper order. And it's definitely looking like it's heading towards a helpful thing, but it is a slippery slope
Ooh,
because
it can be a slippery slope. You write that down. Yeah, it's good. Let me stop for a second, Brandon. Okay, this is. Can I just remind you of what you're witnessing, and particularly for watching the recording? Like, take a look at this scene right here. This is the future, in the positive sense. Look at the tech. Microphone. He has his wheels. He just said he has autism. He has his disability. And yet, look at the intelligence on display. Maybe I'm being too positive. I don't think so. How do we use these things, these machines? You, as a leader, constantly, no matter what project you're working on, no matter who your team is, no matter who the people are, how intercultural the team is, you will have at your fingertips lots of digital power. Do you know how to use that power responsibly, or will it start to use you? I would say to you that it's a good test when you come into this space, that if you're able to interact and listen human to human for 90 minutes, probably that shows you can control your desire to be in your machine. But if you find yourself disappearing into your phone or somewhere else, that's an indication that maybe you're not quite ready for leadership. Maybe the machine is just controlling you a little too much, and you have a problem with self-control, self-regulation. Yes. I'm not saying you do, okay? I'm just pointing it out, but the fact that you're here in the class is great, okay? So, but I'm gonna expect you grown-ups, and I can say some things that are tough, but I'm here on your side, okay? Go ahead.
I would say I agree with Gina, but I think there's like a line that has to be drawn, like as someone who uses technology. Like I think it's very easy to like give your thoughts over to like AI, but also like integrating it, I think is very integral as like someone who's a professional or a student because you use it, understanding that it's an AI and it's like a lower level of intelligence. So you're just trying to like incorporate that into your life. Also like the ethical challenges, I think it's more like the concern is more about like protecting art and protecting free thought as well as like protecting the environment as well. So the conversation I think is more directed like what what is defined like what are people defining as ethical and where do we like draw the line in that.
Exactly. Where do we draw the line? Where do we? And that's something that I hope we can continue to explore through the semester in terms of leadership skills, the role of AI, and where you draw the line in terms of leadership as well. What's your name again?
Isaiah.
Isaiah, thanks. That's great. And I liked what you said about lower level intelligence. I'd like to believe that the machines and AI is a lower level of intelligence, but boy, when you listen to people like Sam Altman at OpenAI and others these days, and where we're going, and the kinds of things that AI is soon going to be able to do, it starts to feel like it's the higher level of intelligence, and we humans are not. But
I think the AI is really limited like on its physical capability of like its computation power. So like large server rooms, like lots of like water and stuff like that. But like as a further development of like, have you seen like the human brain, like robots and stuff like that, where they're integrating like brain cells into computers and stuff like that? Like I think that's
I'm trying to stay up on it, Isaiah, for sure.
I think
for sure.
that's more like where the ethical questioning like comes into line because that's how like this technology develops into something more dangerous. But I think like keeping it like kind of like lower level and just using it as a tool is something that's fine and will like further propel our society. It's just like any other form of technology.
The intersection, we would say, and then we'll move on, a form of the intersection between robotics and artificial intelligence is a critical thing to understand today. So it's a fascinating field. But okay, let's move out of review and the discussion
Hey,
posts. And
Professor.
Gina, thank you for Ajoy. Did you want to say something? Go ahead.
Yes, in this case, I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Actually, in last 3 or 4 years, I usually ask a lot of question to the different guests, but I seldomly had the chance to ask you a question. So
Me a
today,
question. Okay.
yes,
Fair
yes,
enough. Go
to
ahead.
you.
Yeah. Sure.
Well, in this matter, in terms of AI, not only AI, also the deep fakes, also the global shift, climate change, and this kind of complexity as happening, and mostly as nobody to say it is directly or indirectly uh, impacting the spirit of education. As you are a academician,
Yes.
I also work there. So in the as an academician, don't you feel sometimes helpless, and don't you think that in this race the global academia or the academic force are still not ready or still not aware to combat these challenges, this complexity?
It's a great question, and it actually connects to what I want to talk about in more detail. And I'm going to show you a video in a moment. My answer to you is, Ajoy, that's why I'm so passionately committed to building the global classroom into something new, because we can all do what we can. We can't do more than we are able to. We only have so much mental bandwidth and so many hours in the day and so much energy. But we can all do our part, Ajoy, to ensure that we move into the future and we maintain our humanity. We maintain what makes us so beautifully human, and we ensure that the machines that we develop are only going to augment our lives, make us more enabled and more connected. We can all do our part. So I'm trying to do my part. That's all, Ajoy. So I am positive. I think that the more people in education who care and are creative will be ready to provide classroom experiences that are more sophisticated. So let me just come back to something that's so important today. I want to drill down on a very important force that all of you are going to have to deal with as emerging leaders or as people who are interested in other global leaders. So I'm just going to speak for just a moment, and then we're going to watch a video that is teed up here. And you will see also online, for those of you who are joining us online, Gina, could you put the link in for Ajoy in the live chat? Because he doesn't have access. I don't know if you're... Ajoy, Maureen's going to put the link in for a video for you to watch. But for Dishya, Max, and Gina, you will see in the class 2 folder, you will see a video called Romeo Dallaire. Don't click on it yet, okay? Just have it ready to click on. Now, Romeo Dallaire is an example of a global leader. And last week, when we began to talk about the class this semester, we began to just introduce some of the global leaders that I think are important to talk about in the world. And there are many today that we can talk about. But I tried to do it organically. I tried to listen to all of you and to see what you said. And I think it was, I can't remember which student it was who said, she's from Rwanda. Okay, what's your name again? Microphone, I don't know Who's got a mic? Sean, can you, we'll give her the mic, okay? We'll come back. Exactly. You give her providence. Go ahead. What's your name again?
My name is Ruth Nyamko.
Ro-
Ruth.
Ruth. Okay. So Ruth, you were the student who said you're from Rwanda. And then I kind of started talking about this person behind me right now. Okay. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this, okay? And then I'm going to show a video in a moment about Romeo Dallaire. It has some pretty graphic things in it. So I just want to warn you. You may see some things. If you don't want to be watching it, you can leave, or any of you can leave. It's okay, but I just want to prepare you, okay? In a moment, I'm going to show you a part of a documentary on Romeo Dallaire. And who is Romeo Dallaire? Well, he's a global leader. And I mentioned last week, as a result of what Ruth had said, I introduced you to someone among many that you will meet this semester, a person who is passionately committed to improving the mental health services for men and women who have been in combat, in war, in conflict. We talked a lot about, or at least we started to talk about conflict. One of the great forces in the sort of story that we'll be exploring this semester, it probably close on its own, is how you manage intercultural conflict. A global leader has to deal with people from all different parts of the world, all different persuasions, all different backgrounds. That's normal for a good global leader. So intercultural literacy is critical. And you have that opportunity in this class, the way I've set it up, to interact live with people from all different cultures. And you saw on display last week, I was honest and I said, here I am a Jew. And here is a person from Nablus, believe in Palestine. We'll see. We hope. I wanted only for you to recognize that when you come into this class, we're prepared to really talk about difficult things. And it's a hard thing for a Jew and a Muslim to talk from a religious standpoint. But we have to. This is the world we live in. So conflict is very, very critical in understanding how to manage that. And we will be having a guest in 3 or 4 weeks, Vaibhav, and he's going to come back, who is going to be giving a whole workshop on conflict management for all of you. He's one of the guests of many. But at the bottom of conflict, that is really important for you to understand, and that's my critical point today. Just one really important point that's going to help get you ready for the classes that are coming. You'll meet next week Shema from United Arab Emirates, who was a youth representative at the United Nations. And she's going to speak about that experience of being involved with the United Nations, an organization once upon a time in the human story that was considered a solution to our problems and now seems to be part of our problem. At the root of conflict is this deeper force. It's called complexity. And this is what I want to help you to understand through the story of Romeo Dallaire a little bit more today about his experiences and about what exactly is complexity and why is it so important, not only from a leadership standpoint in understanding how to manage it, but in your own life. And if we have time, hopefully we're going to be able to get going on the screens this class, which is there'll be 2 or 3 students each who go to an individual screen and they work on a problem together with their pen and their writing, and we'll see everything written up on the big board here we'll be sharing those 5 screens up on the big board as you guys are writing things out, and then we'll come and take up things together. And you will be doing an activity around complexity. We'll see if we have time. More important is for you to understand that if you are unable or you are facing deep challenges in the world today in getting anything done, it's because of the complexity of the situation can be overwhelming for us. This brings me back to Romeo Dallaire to give you an example of complexity. I'm hoping that this word, complexity, is going to be ringing in your minds through the semester, because you're going to find when you wake up in the morning and you go through your day, you're going to begin to see how complicated your lives are and how much stress it causes us. Romeo Dallaire knows a lot about this. So let me just explain about what you're going to see in a moment. In 1994, a Canadian senior military figure named Romeo Dallaire joined the United Nations as this lieutenant general. He was responsible for peacekeeping. The United Nations has been our organization through the 20th century, grew out of the Second World War. It was created because of the suffering of the Second World War, and it was supposed to be where all the world's cultures come together and they meet and they decide on how we're going to solve the world's deep problems. It doesn't work like that anymore. It's a different world. Romeo Dallaire began to learn that in 1994. He was tasked with going over to Africa, to the heart of Africa, a small country, Rwanda, in which there was a tribal civil conflict between 2 long-standing groups in Rwanda, the Hutus and the Tutsis. They could be Jews and Arabs, they could be Christians and Buddhists, they could be Chinese and Japanese. It's 2 groups that historically have grievances against one another. And they were at war. And so brutal was the conflict, as I mentioned last week, that Romeo Dallaire found himself in a situation where he tried to go back to the United Nations, to the Security Council, to get help. Because hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people were being slaughtered in the streets. And he's going to speak to this in a moment. Romeo Dallaire was put into a situation in 1994 that was incredibly complicated. A person coming from Canada, working for an international organization, being dropped into Africa to deal with a long-standing conflict in which he had to somehow find a way to bring peace. This is the complex global world. This is what it's like to be a leader in the world today. You have to deal with some very difficult, complicated problems. Well, in 2004, 10 years later, all was done, he went back to visit Rwanda, to visit the place where he felt the world had profoundly failed. He felt that he had been unable to stop human beings from slaughtering each other on the scale that they were. And he blamed the United Nations. He blamed himself. And he fell into a deep depression. It's called post-traumatic stress disorder. This documentary that has been made about him, you're going to just see about 3 minutes of it, just the trailer, is going to introduce you to him and his wife as they go back to Rwanda, and he's trying to remember what happened, and he's trying to help the world understand what he's been dealing with. Talk about an onslaught of complexity that this man faced, and it almost killed him. But let's explore this. After you watch this trailer, I want to be able to put a list of critical terms and points of what is complexity exactly? Why is it so difficult in the world today? And why does it lead people to break down? Why does it lead people to be so anxious all the time? You know exactly what I'm talking about. Every single one of you is massively rattled. You've been called, and I will include myself with you, the anxious generation. Well, a lot of it has to do with you're having difficulty managing the complexity of the world today, and it's burying you. So let's take a look at Romeo Dallaire. Let's start, and then we're going to make a few points. For those of you in the Cosmos, Dish it, Max, Gina, go ahead and click on Romeo Dallaire, and let's watch this. Can we just stop for a sec? Just for, I just want to warn you. You're going to see some things here, okay, that are tough. It's real. This is not made up. So if any of you don't want to watch this, you can leave or just turn around. But I just want to give you a chance to think about this. You're watching a very savage conflict and somebody trying to resolve it. You, you will probably have to deal with things like this in different ways as a leader. I'm not saying like this, but conflict. Okay, go ahead. There's a full documentary that you can watch, as well as a whole feature film that was made, and even another one called Hotel Rwanda. So it's a well-known story. Now, let me just make sure we're good before we, and you can just keep it frozen there. That's great. Did everybody online, Gina, Max, and Diksha, were you able to watch that 3 minutes? Great. Okay, so you can keep up with the conversation. First, I want to say, as we explore this idea of complexity, I just want to make sure it's okay if I bring Ruth into the conversation when we can. Is it okay to bring you in at time? Do you have any personal experience with this?
Personally, I don't, but my parents lived it.
Okay. So if you don't want to say anything, please don't. Okay. But this is experiential education. This is part of being in the global classroom. When we talk about things, we literally have people from that part of the world right here. That's not bad in terms of educational experience. Do you have any questions about what you just saw with this Lieutenant General Romeo Dallaire and the situation in Rwanda and global leadership? And yeah, that was a lot of skulls, Max. And that was real. These were not just put there for, somebody's entertainment. This was real stuff. Any questions before I try to help you to understand what's important in terms of global leadership?
I have a
Isaiah? Yeah.
Yeah. So why is it so important that we learn about Romeo Dallaire? Like, what's
Great
the
question.
relevancy?
Great question. Why is it so important that we learn about Romeo Dallaire? Well, first, Romeo Dallaire is a person, as I mentioned, who has used his experiences where he failed to solve a problem, and he's tried to educate the world about what we need to do to make sure something like this never happens again. So he himself felt that he personally failed to stop the slaughter of this, stop the war there. The war continued, even though he was there trying to bring those two sides together, and he was unable to succeed in doing that. And so the war continued. The more important thing is that afterwards, when he came back, he admitted that he suffered greatly from this, that he was so impacted by this, that he fell into a very deep period of mental health instability, a depression, a suicidal behavior because of his failure. And he began to recover, and he went on a mission, as you can see in his website and the work he's done, to educate the rest of the world about how to manage mental health issues, but also what we as leaders need to do to stop this from ever happening again. So that's why it's important you know about him, because from a leadership standpoint, at least when it comes to politics, Isaiah, he can help us to understand something about what we shouldn't do and what we might be able to do in the future. And that's where I want to help you a little bit.
Yeah, I understand that, but like I feel like this topic is a lot more nuanced than just saying like Romeo Dallaire tried and then he failed, so he's like sad about it. Like there was a lot other things that led to that failure. Like
Yes.
one general and 5,000 men is not going to liberate like a country of like millions of people, right? So I think this conversation is a lot more nuanced, and that there's like should be
Excellent.
different things that we're highlighting about his failure in Rwanda. Like sure, I think it's great to acknowledge mental health and say like this is bad, we shouldn't do that, but like there's a lot of other nuanced like issues that like derive from the situation, like leading to him and the UN being deployed in Rwanda.
Can you come sit here so we can see you? Excellent. Let's start the slide then, the critical slide today. The force of complexity. The force of complexity. I love what Isaiah is saying right now, which is that there's something we need to understand in which this is not so simple. And I'm only skating on the surface here, trying to introduce just the very critical conflict of what he faced and why he's become so well known in the world. You mentioned the word nuanced. That's another way of saying complexity. Now, we could look into the story of his failure in Rwanda with the United Nations mission there. And next week, you're going to meet a young UN leader who can speak even more about working inside the United Nations, our global institution of peacekeeping. But let's look at nuance. This is where we're going to create a little list of critical points of complexity in this story. And then we'll bring it back to how this relates to your own experience of complexity. I hope that you will come out in the next 15 or 20 minutes, Isaiah, with a deeper understanding of the challenge of complexity and how we can confront it and deal with it instead of being buried by it, as Romeo Dallaire was. He failed. The world failed. But the world failed in many ways because of the complexity of the situation. And this is what happens in a world that is so global, so planetized. There are so many different things to think about. So first, what does complexity mean? Isaiah mentioned nuance. So let's write down nuanced for a second, okay? And Tom, if there's anything else you'd like to write, go ahead, but we'll guide you. This is the critical information. When I say to you that Romeo Dallaire went into a situation that was very complex and he failed, well, let's talk about the bigger force here of complexity. What is complexity? Anyone want to try? And we'll do this together instead of going into our teams today, just because of time. We want to understand what complexity is and how this relates to leadership. You want to try, Amir? Go ahead. Microphone? Yeah, great. Complexity, what is it?
I think in short terms, if we say like when we have like 2 points that have the hard things like with it that we can't fill apart it. So what I mean like it's something that there is a hard way, like you have a hard way to like remove it or like have a solution for it.
Okay, well, we're starting. Complexity is hard. Okay, complexity is the hardest thing to deal with. But what is complexity? I'm telling you that the situation that he faced was an immensely complex situation. Isaiah is already on this. And he said, it's much more nuanced, Lon, than you've made it out to be. And he's right. So what are the nuances here? Because in the nuances, we will find complexity. And I can give you a definition clearly. I'm just curious if any of you want to try and explain what it is. Complexity. Want to try? Yeah, go ahead. Okay. Complexity. Complexity.
The problem without a straightforward solution. I think that's like a simple definition I could give.
Say that again. It's
a problem with no straightforward solution, or maybe no solution at all.
No, it may have a solution. Absolutely. Complexity is about the problem. It's not about the solution. There are solutions to complex problems. Absolutely. So it's about the problem. Aphthoma, is it? It's aphoma. Do you want to say something? Aphthoma, go ahead. Yeah.
So I think complexity is like an intricate difficulty, something that's complicated at the details of it. Like the details are complicated.
Yeah, we're getting there. We're not there yet. See, a lot of us don't really understand what complexity is. And once you start to really get a handle on it, you will see how you can manage it. But you're going to be dealing with this all the time. In fact, you deal with this every day in your life. Okay? Ethan? Yeah, Ethan, go ahead. Hold on, Sean. Yeah. What is complexity?
I would believe that complexity would be multiple factors that have hard.
Multiple factors, multiple parts. How about multiple moving parts? Multiple moving parts. Lovely. Now we're getting somewhere. Romeo Dallaire comes into a situation in Africa. First, he has a conflict, and he has to understand the Tutsis, and he has to understand Hutu. That's the first, these are parts, and they're moving parts. They're at war with each other. That's just the beginning of it. Then he has his own military training. He wasn't trained in Africa. He wasn't trained in Rwanda. He was trained in the Western, in North America, in Canada. So he brings his own set of ideas on how to solve. That's another part that he's bringing. Then he had a team of people. He had thousands of soldiers, United Nations soldiers that he was responsible for to help him with the situation. So he had to manage them. How about his personal health? He said he barely slept during that time then, and he ran on adrenaline. He led on adrenaline, largely. That's dangerous. From a leadership standpoint, if you're entering the day, every day, and you're using energy drinks, and you're using caffeine, and you're using adrenaline to get you through, you are going to physically crash at one point. Are you starting to get a sense of how complex things were for him? How nuanced things were? We could even go deeper into this. He was representing the United Nations. It had its own mandate on what he should be doing there. The United Nations consists of 193 countries sitting on in a large chamber. They have to agree on what to do. But then there's a Security Council. The 5 powers in the world are members of the Security Council. The United States, France, England, China, and I think Russia right now are the 5 big members of the Security Council. They have to agree on everything that a peacekeeping mission does. And he, Romeo Dallaire, was so angry because he would go back to New York and he would try to convince the Security Council that he needed more help, but they didn't care because those powers, Russia and China, the United States and others, have interests in those countries. They have national interests in Africa. So now the nuanced picture, is it getting bigger? Do you get that sense? It's getting more complex in terms of what he had to deal with? Or maybe not.
It can be simplified as, well, everyone wants the thing that they want. And so they're willing to disagree on working together.
Okay,
For,
let's keep going.
for the
I want-
common good, I guess.
What happens to the common good? Question mark. Very good point. But I want to make sure Isaiah walks away from here today feeling like he understood something a little more because he made a very good point. And he's smart. I get that sense. And I want to make sure he feels that this is explaining a bit more about what nuanced means, because nuanced and complexity are the same thing. Go ahead.
Yeah, I understand that, but I think there's still like things that need to be acknowledged. Like Rwanda was an ethno state before like any of this happened, right? It was a former colony ethno state. Then that's what led to this whole civil war. So I think that like there's still a lot more nuance that needs to be talked about. Like when you're saying like, yeah, Rwanda was like, it was bad. Like there was a lot of things that are happening. Like there was weapons being shipped into Rwanda on marked planes. Like there is other international interests like in Rwanda, right?
Sure,
Like,
sure.
there's a reason why like these things never passed the UN Security Council. Like there's a lot of other things that I think that need to be acknowledged when just saying, like, obviously I think there's value in understanding that a leader failed and that he grew from his experience, but I feel like this experience was something that nobody could really like come out of victorious, because there was other factors like keeping the situation as it was. There's a reason why like there weren't more troops deployed in Rwanda.
Okay, let's stop for a second, because from a leadership standpoint, I think Isaiah has just said something very instructive. First, he said that there are many more things here that are at issue. The history of colonialism, imperialism in Africa, slavery, all of those things. But I'm going to put those aside. That just adds to the pot of complexity here, Isaiah. But he said something where I think he's profoundly wrong. Let's come back to why you're here. You're here to understand global leadership. You're here to meet some emerging global leaders and experienced leaders, and to also meet some people who've been very important on the global stage in their leadership, for better or for worse. But leadership is really important to you, right? Well, a good leader never says, I can't do it, that the situation is too complex. There's so many things going on here that nobody really can be victorious here. Nobody can really succeed. Imagine people working for you, and you have a complicated problem, and you go back to them and you say, can't do it. There's too much going on here. You know, just too much. I guess it's just going to continue this way forever. Rwanda's always going to be like this. People are always going to be killing each other. There will be these ethno-states. That's just the way the world is. And I'm a realist, guys. I just tell you the truth. That is what we call defeatism. I'm just challenging you here.
I agree, and I definitely don't believe I have a defeatist mindset, but I think in this context, when you think about like a country that's been ravaged by war, ravaged by colonialism, obviously there's going to be someone in the UN that's going to be like, I can fix this, but there's a large percent of large portion of the government that are literally just saying, yo, let these black people just kill themselves, and then we'll come in and sort it out later. Like, I think there's there's value in understanding that and seeing that like leadership can come in different ways. Like, it's not only about like the people that we hear about, it's also about, or that are like talked about in history, it's also about the leadership of the people that went through these experiences, who aren't acknowledged, and that still like are able to live their lives in some capacity.
Okay, but all fair points, but I want to come back to the critical thing of what we can learn from Romeo Dallaire's failure in dealing with this situation. And the critical thing that we can learn from him is that he was unable to fix or help with a very complicated problem. And he admitted that. That's a failure. But there are many conflicts still happening in the world, many in your own life. What can we learn from his failure to ensure that in the next conflict, wherever it may be, we can succeed? What's critical in that? What do we need to understand? And I would say to you first that we need to look at examples around the world where there has been success in managing what are called existential or intractable problems. And we can do that in places like Ireland, for example. That's one place where there has been a deep problem. But more important is the idea of the values that it takes. Stephen Lewis said in the interview in here, Stephen Lewis was talking about Romeo Dallaire's experience, and he said that he'd been a bit naive about the problem that he was facing. It's really important that whenever you face a very difficult situation that requires an enormous amount of understanding of complication, that you persevere. that you are not defeatist, that you are ready before you go into the situation, before you go, you stop and you say to yourself, am I ready for the complexity of this? And when it gets really, really, really hard, what am I going to do? Am I emotionally, physically capable of handling the stress? Do I need to become stronger? Do I need to know more? Let's come back now and we'll finish up here to something very specific, your day. How many of you would say that in your day, from the time you wake up, time you go to bed, you're dealing with multiple moving parts? Things are changing and they're all kind of connected and you have to kind of manage this all somehow. Would you say that it's Dylan? Dylan? Okay, Dylan. Multiple moving parts going on in your day. How many of you would say that as you go through the day, you are feeling a lot of stress? Romeo Dallaire said he couldn't sleep. Well, in fact, what he said, truthfully, is he relied on adrenaline to get him through. So he wasn't sleeping that much. Maybe that was part of his problem. And maybe he should have been a little more aware of his physical constitution and how he deals with stress first. But in the course of your day, when you're dealing with these multiple moving parts, when you have your own little, it's just your tiny little Rwanda going on, conflict going on, things are happening in your day where there is so much to deal with. How do you deal with that? What ensures that you can manage that so your day is successful?
I have like stress management tools and I like to meditate and read, but I think the two aren't really comparable. Like Romeo Dallaire saw dead people like every day and people getting cut up with machetes and like executed on the side of the road. So I think that type of restlessness is not very comparable unless you were like in an active war zone or something like that. But I think like to your point
Sure,
that you're making like stress management tools, et cetera, like healthy living is all things that like global leaders should have. But I feel like this is a very like extreme case of someone who was in a situation they couldn't breathe, like there was nothing they could do about it as much as they wanted to. So it's like I understand what you're saying. It's very much commendable, but like it's very like an isolated incident of like, okay, this person is like important.
He was trained. He came up through the military. He was trained to be able to deal with these kinds of problems.
Yep.
So he was ready, but he wasn't. You're right that this is an extreme example. But all global leaders, people who achieve things, are kind of extreme. They're the ones who kind of put themselves out more. They're the ones who care more. They're the ones who are prepared to take on the responsibility more. If you're not ready to take on that responsibility, then maybe you shouldn't be leading. Amir, go ahead.
I will just like give a simple example. Like I think he was like let's compare it like for me, I know like a lot about football that called soccer here. It's like me talking about the hockey here.
About hockey.
Yeah.
Okay.
He know like what happened like in the military, like in the North America, and if he fought in Europe, etc., etc. But he don't know the situation what was in Africa. He should like have studied it. He should ask before it. He should ask people, the people who have fight, the people who actually live in it, not just like, oh, we are in a United Nation. Okay, let's go and see
Yes, yes.
what's happening in. Let's give like an example, like Algeria or Tunisia. Okay, they have like civil war. We can help here, but you don't know, like you don't know even how to speak with those people. Like you are not the like someone from this area. You don't know anything about their culture. You don't know anything about them. You know what happened in North America or in Europe, but you don't know what's happening in North Africa. You don't know
Yeah.
anything about them.
So do your research. We don't know if Romeo Dallaire really did learn a lot about the situation that he was going into. I can't answer that. Maybe he did know more than we think, but Amir's point is very important here. Do your homework before you go into a crisis. Now, I'm going to end today with something that will help this a little bit more, and then I'm going to give you time to do your second question today in the class to make sure everybody does it. It's said today that we live at a time of permacrisis. Have any of you heard of that term, permacrisis? Permacrisis? Permacrisis. Let's come back to where we were at the beginning today, if Gina is still there. Gina, do you remember that you wrote, of course you would, in your final paragraph? Can you come back to what you read to us about catastrophe?
Would you like me to read it again?
Not the whole thing, just the part, the sentence where you
Mm.
said that, you know, there's catastrophes happening everywhere today. Can you read that again?
Yes. So I wrote, our world is facing catastrophes around every corner.
Okay, stop. Our world is facing catastrophes around every corner. That's another way of talking about permacrisis. There's crises happening all around you in the larger world today that you're exposed to all the time, whether it's war in the Middle East, war in Ukraine, whether it's wildfires blowing through California, whether it's people in Canada who cannot make enough money and are lining up at food banks to get the food that they need. And we're about to go into another election, a federal election. Rwanda was a crisis. That's what it was. And Isaiah is right, and it has many nuances. It's very complicated, but it's just one of many crises in the world. If you're not ready to deal with crisis, you can't lead. Have you thought about the world around you in terms of crisis before, but also crisis that you can solve? Not crisis that you can't. Many of us are under the impression that all the things that are happening around us right now, whether it's climate change, whether it's terrorism, whether it's the threat of artificial intelligence, whether it's political turbulence, whether it's the death of liberalism in the world and the return of the big tyrants who don't care about democracy and how democracy is threatened. There's so many problems. Many of you may think you can't do anything about it, but you can. How do you do something about crisis? What's the most important thing that you have to think about? And then we're going to stop and we'll do a question. You as a leader, any leader, is the problem solver. You come in and you are asked to solve a problem. Whether it's you're running a business, a small initiative, whether you're leading a project at school, whether you're Romeo Dallaire going into the most extreme, difficult situation, you are a problem solver. So what do you need? What's the one quality that you need when you are asked to come in and solve a problem? Let's get this there, and then we're going to finish. What's the one thing? And I touched on this last week. It's really kind of remarkably simple. Yes.
I think critical thinking.
We'll make a little list, but not the one I'm looking. Critical thinking for sure. Absolutely. Keep going. Want to try, Ethan? It's a 4-letter word, by the way.
That's oddly specific. I'd say like have a good process or system to break down such problems.
Have a good process. Fair enough. I'll help you because we're going to end, okay? And then next week you're going to meet Shema from the UAE, and she will talk about working within the United Nations and the difficulty inside this large or successes. What exactly do you care about? Care. C-A-R-E. Care. Do you care enough? The leader is the one who cares the most. Just care. Do you care about solving this problem? If you don't care, I would say you're probably not ready to lead. Somebody else is going to come in and is going to work a little bit harder than you, is going to be doing a little more homework than you are, is going to be putting themselves out there a little bit more. So, do you care more about yourself? Do you really care more about yourself? If you do, you're ready. If all you care about is yourself, that's a tough thing for a good leader to really do. You will become maybe a person who's successful, but will you have really led people, lifted people up, inspired, made things better? Isaiah?
I have a question. It's a bit unrelated, but it's talking about someone who's a leader. Do you feel that Yuval Noah Harari is like qualified to be the leader of the World Economic Forum, like just based on?
It's a good question. I would say that intellectually, Yuval Noah Harari, who is one of our most important global thinkers today, author of Homo Deus and Sapiens and other books about the human race. Yes, he's a leader. He's an intellectual leader. Yeah.
But does that mean he should be in charge of the World Economic Forum though? Because he's like a very smart guy. Like, should he be in charge of where loans are given and
I would
global
be
fiscal
surprised if
policy?
he was given that position. My answer, I'll try to give a thoughtful answer, is no, I don't think he would be somebody who should be in charge of the World Economic Forum.
Okay.
That's my, based on what I.
Okay. This is like another
No, and
just random question. Like,
thank you for bringing Yuval Noah Harari into it. And in the short history of the world, which I teach on Fridays, I do a lot of that big, human race stuff. But that's good questions.
and this is like another like unrelated question. Like, how do you feel about like Luigi Mangione and like all that stuff like happening, like related to his case and like how they're treating him and using, like very pushing their like serious language around him?
Well, let me stop for a second because I'm looking at time. Could you do me a favor and make that your question for this week? Okay,
Sure.
so it gets into the discussion board, and then we'll address it in the review next week. Okay, thanks a lot. We're done. If you want to make sure you get your 3 out of 3, go straight to the discussion board right now in the next 2 minutes and just write a question. Isaiah has his question. Put it in the discussion board. Don't forget, because if you wait until next week, you probably will forget. But if you do it now, okay? Anyways, I'll leave that with you. That's just a little extra. You have until next week to do your question. For Diksha, Max, and Gina, thank you. You all know that if you want full marks for 3 out of 3 for your discussion board, you need to provide the reason for your question as well, okay? Just care. What do you care about? Really, really care about more than yourself. That's where you're going to find your leadership skills. Great. Okay, everybody. Thanks. We'll get everything posted with Maureen. Have a good